Well, sadly, it's our last session together. It's kind of a bummer. I've really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. So earlier today, I grabbed a shirt and put it on. Mainly, I wore this shirt, Oklahoma Christian, because I wanted my opening comment to simply be, if you ever visit Oklahoma, I'm right in the middle, and I preach at a church called the Memorial Road Church of Christ, and it is very delightful to me when teenagers come visit Memorial Road, and they come up to me and they say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so. I was at," and they name some event or youth rally. It's kind of fun. So if you're ever in Oklahoma and you come to visit and you come to Memorial Road, you're going to say, so repeat after me, say, "Hi, my name is," you can say your name. And then you would say, "I was at THRV 2024. And then I will say, "God is here. This is a gift." And then we'll do a fist bump and go, poof. And everybody around us will be like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So I've already created this inside joke. So now you have to come, because the truth is, I really believe this is going to happen. The Oklahoma City Thunder are going to make the NBA Finals this year. And all you basketball fans are like, "I need to go to a game." And so you're gonna come to Oklahoma City, and you're gonna come to a game, and you're gonna visit Memorial Road, and we're gonna talk again. So that's your instructions. And I feel guilty that I wore this shirt mainly to invite you to Oklahoma, but I did not wear it knowing that we would be promoting Faulkner. So just pretend I'm wearing a Faulkner T-shirt tonight. I'm a huge believer in Christian higher ed across the board. It's so important. That phase of your life is really critical, where you're choosing career path and you're looking for significant other, and it's so important to be in a Christian environment. So I just highly encourage you to think about that as you get older. Okay, final message here. We're going to try to pull everything together. We got highs, we got lows, we got mountains, we got valleys, we got the plain. How do you do it? How do you actually live your day-to-day life and not be so jerked around by all the voices in your head, all the temptations in your life, just all the busyness that we all find ourselves in? How do we be these stable, centered people? My favorite story ever about my grandfather, who passed away maybe 6 years ago, was a time when 1940s, late 1940s, my grandfather was a World War II vet. He'd come back home, and he was living out in this rural town in western Oklahoma, and there was a big plot of land, and he was on a tractor mowing this field, and one of his buddies was on another tractor, and they were mowing it together. Well, back then, the weather warning systems were nothing like they are today, and so there was no sirens. No one could turn on the TV and just say, "Oh, it looks like we're going to have a tornado or a hurricane." They just came. And so they're out mowing the field, and it got a little overcast, and it started sprinkling just a little bit. And the friend of my grandfather says, "Ferris, I wonder if we should take it back to the barn." And my grandfather's like, "Nah, we're almost done. Let's keep going." No joke. Tornado just drops into the field. They jump off their tractors and they start running to the barn. Well, my grandpa, I wish you would have known him. He's the most no-nonsense guy you've ever met. He's just plain, simple, tell the truth, never exaggerates. So he's not exaggerating when he tells this part of the story. He's running as fast as he can to the barn, and all of a sudden his feet are just no longer on the ground. He's like, "Oh." He's just going up and up and up. And then he says that he flattened, and he actually started soaring like Superman about 60 feet off the ground, just flying, not knowing what he's supposed to do. Well, he flies by a tree, like this huge tree. And so he grabs the branches, and he just winds his way into the middle, and then he holds onto the trunk, and this tornado passes by. And then my grandfather got to do something that very few humans have ever done in their life. He got to climb down a tree that he didn't climb up. And he lived, and I'm here now, so that's nice. So I want you to think of that tree as a metaphor and the tornado as a metaphor. The tornado is really just life. Things are going to happen that are really going to stress you out. You're going to make some mistakes. But that tree is like an anchor. It's the Lord. And there are some people that have this ability to remain centered even when the world's doing this. And then there are other people, they're not like that. And they get swept away by anxiety, temptation, depression, whatever their friends are doing. They just get caught up in it and they can't stay grounded. So this talk is really about how do you become that kind of a person? How do you navigate the spiritual highs and the lows so that you can be this calm, centered, grounded disciple of Jesus? So really there's one key idea. I'm going to introduce it in a hopefully interesting way, and we'll talk about it for a few minutes. I need 2 volunteers for this. The first volunteer is a very specific kind of person. I need you to be comfortable with being on stage. Maybe kind of looking a little bit dumb while you're up here. I'm going to ask you to do something. But then here's the big one. I really need someone that doesn't even know what beatboxing is. Anybody have no idea what that word means? You have no idea what that word means? Okay, come up to the stage. You can come up. And can I have a microphone? Is there can I have the handheld? Okay. You can stand right here. Now you tell us your name again.
Anna.
Anna, because you got to defend the minority position a lot on the first day, right? Okay. So you don't know what beatboxing is. Do you have any guesses?
You beat a box.
Maybe. That could be it. Could be I'm about to pull a box out. All right, now I need someone, and it's okay if you're good at, I need someone who's good, like someone who can lay down a beat on stage into this microphone. Do you want to do this? You can do it? All right. You can do this. Okay. So,
I'm not saying I'm that great at it.
but have you done it before? Have you? You can.
I was like a little kid. Like I know what I'm doing. So.
You know what you're doing. What's your name?
Callie.
Callie. Okay. Callie, thank you for volunteering. Anna, thank you for volunteering. So, Anna, what beatboxing is, it's the ability to make rhythmic sounds with your mouth, like to simulate a drum beat. So, we're going to start here. What I want you to do, take the mic, I just need you to lay down some kind of a beat that we could snap along to.
Can I phone a friend?
You can get someone else from the audience if you're not comfortable with this. Just something we could get. You can pass this. Anybody else? I think we need a sub. Okay, thank you. There we go. This is good. Just hey, thanks for volunteering anyway, though. Okay, here we go. Now, audience, you have a job. When he starts beatboxing, you're just going to snap along. Try to find the beat, and you're just going to snap with it, okay? Take it away. Right, left, right, left, right, left. That was so good. Okay, round of applause. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you so much. It's so good. Okay, good luck.
Oh.
Just do something. Just make a noise. Just do anything. You can make an animal sound. Here, try to do this. Can you sound like a motorboat? Just, you do that? Try that. Actually, I'm going to save you because that's exactly what I was hoping would happen. Round of applause for Anna. That was great. That was great. I loved it. Can you hold that? Okay. This is exactly what I was hoping would happen. So here's the point. When it comes to spiritual navigation, think rhythm, not random. Everybody say this phrase with me. When it comes to spiritual navigation, think rhythm, not random. So clearly this was rhythm. That was a great beat that you laid down. You could snap to it. It was predictable. It happened over and over. That's what rhythm is. It's doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. This was not rhythm. This was, Anna, thank you for volunteering, but that was about as random as can be. You did a lot of this, a lot of, there was no beat to it. We couldn't snap along because it was random. So thank you so much. You did a great job of pulling off random. Now, your spiritual life, if this becomes the mold for your spiritual life, wherein, okay, I'm going to do church camp in the summer, and then once in the fall, I'm going to do THRV, and that'll be good. And then I'm going to take a break. And then when March rolls around, there's going to be some other event, and that'll be good. I'll get close to Jesus again. And then I'm going to tank, and then it'll be summer, and I'll do church camp. If that becomes your spiritual life, it's not going to go well for you. That's random. But if you can become the kind of person that finds a rhythm of being with the Lord, especially if you do it over time, you become an extremely strong Christian man or woman. In fact, think about there's so many examples of this. I want you to think just biology for a minute. Just you're a human being. You live every single day. Think about your breathing, just how God made your body. Like you don't, even if you wanted to, you don't inhale 4 or 5 gallons of air now so that you can hold your breath for the next 3 hours. Like that's not how it works. You can try it, but your body won't let you do that because in order for you to survive, your body, all of your body is based on rhythms. Or think about the way that you eat. So I'm guessing that even on your hungriest day, you don't say to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to eat 5 16-ounce steaks today, and then I'll be good till Christmas. Like I'm good. I'm going to, like a bear, I'm just going to inflate maybe 60 pounds and then not eat for 3 months. We don't do that because it's got to be rhythmic. Everything about your biology is based on rhythm. And think about your sleep. Like you don't sleep for a week so you can stay up for a month. You would die if you didn't sleep. So think about this. Everything in your biology, everything is based on rhythm. So why would the same not be true of your spiritual life? It must be true of your spiritual life. If you try to base your walk with Christ on the word random, it will not go well for you. So my favorite part of the Bible to talk about this is Mark chapter 1. We read a section of this earlier, but I love this story from Jesus. So Mark's gospel just starts off with Jesus on the go. There's not a birth narrative. He's just going. He's doing ministry. And Mark 1 tells the story of what Jesus does in one day. So Jesus wakes up. It's the Sabbath day. He goes to the synagogue. He preaches a sermon. So I'm going to summarize the first few parts of this day. Jesus preaches a sermon in a synagogue on the Sabbath day. And so he's preaching. In the middle of his message, dude stands up, starts screaming. Guy's possessed by a demon. Jesus stops the sermon in real time, walks down, performs an exorcism, walks back up, and keeps preaching. So already this is a difficult day. I've had some weird things happen to me while I'm preaching. I've obviously had the lights go out before. I've had people carried off in stretchers. Lots of weird things have happened while I was preaching. I have never had an evil spirit shriek from the back pew. But this happens. So Jesus preaches, he stops, he does the exorcism, gets back on the stage, keeps going. After the sermon's over, most people after church, they go eat lunch somewhere. Jesus goes to Peter's mother-in-law's house because she's suffering from a fever. Now, if you and I have a fever where it's not a big deal, you just kind of wait it out, take some Tylenol, you're fine. In that day, you could die from a fever. And so Jesus, even though he's had a really hard morning, he goes to Peter's mother-in-law's house and he heals her of this fever. He rebukes the fever. And so she's well. Well, then Jesus goes home. So it's been a long day. And then I love this verse. I'm actually going to read this next verse. Should be on the screen. So this is what happens that night. That evening after sunset, so it's the same day, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and the demon-possessed. So look at verse 33. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases, and he also drove out many demons. So I just want you to imagine this. Jesus, with his apostles, they've had a long day, and they're just kind of sitting around. It's like, wow, that was a long day. We're just chilling and maybe debriefing a little bit. Ding dong. I don't know if they have first century doorbells, but I'm imagining something like that. And so Jesus is like, Andrew, get the door. So Andrew's like, okay, I'll go over here. And he opens the door, and he's standing there. And then Jesus says, Andrew, who's at the door? And Andrew's like, Capernaum. Capernaum is at the door. Like our archaeologists say, it's probably a town of about 1,500 people. All the sick and the demon-possessed are outside. And what time of day is it? Look at the verse on the screen. Evening after sunset. So it's dark when they come. And what does Jesus do? Heals all of them. So the Bible doesn't say, but what time do you think Jesus went to bed that night? Just guess. I don't know. 3, 4, 5, yeah, something like that. If you're healing 1,000 people or several hundred, it's pretty late. Knowing that, this next verse is incredible. Look at the next verse. Read the first 2 words with me. Very early. Isn't that funny? Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he did what? He prayed. This is an amazing scene from the life of Jesus. So here, again, I love to visualize these scenes. So here, I'm imagining it's 3 or 4 in the morning. Jesus just gets done healing the last person. He walks in. The disciples, they're already just conked out, asleep. Maybe like some of you in your host towns, just a bunch of middle school boys with sleeping bags just sprawled out along the ground. So Jesus, walks over people. He lays down for maybe an hour, hour and a half. He can see the sun come up through the window, and he gets up. And they're all still sleeping. And once again, he tiptoes around all these disciples, and he walks outside. And why does he do it? It's because the Son of God felt this insatiable need to pray. And if there's anybody that ever had an excuse not to pray, it'd be Jesus. He came from heaven. He's the second person of the Trinity. He's got this unworldly connection with God. Like if anybody could say, yeah, I'm going to pass today, it'd be Jesus. Jesus can perform miracles. Why would he need to pray? And yet Jesus himself believed that his entire ministry and his entire being was sustained by this practice. Like he had to do it. In other words, Jesus is, like sometimes we think about what made Jesus so amazing. Obviously, he's God. He's the Son of God. He's the Messiah. He's the anointed one. But sometimes we forget that part of what made Jesus so remarkable is his prayer life. He spent so much time with the Father. And when you spend a lot of time with the Father, you can't help but become like the Father. Jesus had to pray. Like there's no way he couldn't do it. Like it was just so much a part of who he was. And so again, the main point here is when it comes to your spiritual life, don't think random. You got to think rhythm. So don't think random. Say random. Don't think. You got to think. Say it again. Don't think. Got to think. This is how Jesus did it. So here's a great quote from this guy that lived a really long time ago. He said, "We do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training." I really like that quote because sometimes you set the expectation. I want to be good at the instrument, or I want to make the team, or I want to make straight A's, or whatever your expectation is. But you're not necessarily going to achieve that if you just set high expectations. What really happens is where you're going to fall, it's the level of your training. So I love to run, and this principle is very true of running. When you get to race day, it's not who tries the hardest. It's who trained the best. It's all about training when it comes to running. And it's all about training when it comes to your faith and your spirituality. Here's another sports metaphor. So Tom Brady, when he was at his peak or even at the end of his career, it's pretty remarkable what he did to stay ready to play. So this guy, I mean, a lot of you will know who he is, but if you don't, so he's trying to make it in the announcing game right now. But as far as his NFL career, get this. He's got the most passing yards of all time, most wins of all time, 3 MVPs, 7 Super Bowls. He was drafted as the 199th pick. It's like nobody thought he would be good. But the way he got so good is he out-trained everybody. There's a physical therapist that works at, or he's an elder at my church, and he's really well networked around the nation. He just got back from Paris. He was part of the team that helped the U.S. rowers. But he just knows everybody. And one day he was telling me that he knows Tom Brady's, what did he call him? A mechanics coach. I was like, what's a mechanics coach? And so my friend David said, well, when Tom Brady was in the NFL, every single week, this guy, his one job is he would watch the game, and he would watch every throw, every step that Brady made, and he would call Brady every week, and he would say things like this. Okay, Tom, make sure when you throw that 22-year-old throw, your arm hit its pinnacle at a 35-degree angle, but remember, we really want to dial that back to 33 to achieve maximum velocity, like that level of specificity. Or your shoulder rotated, I noticed, about 1 inch further than it should before you release the ball. So there's a coach, and his job was to tell Tom Brady all those very minute details about his throwing motion. Tom Brady worked out 3 times a day, again at his peak. He slept in, get this, recovery pajamas. So he'd go to bed in some kind of PJs that helped his body recover while he slept. He ate no dairy. He ate no white sugar, no white flour. He was vegan 9 months out of the year. His normal diet during season, he would basically eat salads, protein shakes, and quinoa just over and over and over again per day. It sounds awful. And yet, the dude performed. So he didn't rise to the level of his expectations. He fell to the level of his training. If you're training that much, you're going to be the best in the world. So it's not just football, it's your spiritual life. So in other words, here's what I find so interesting is I think a lot of teenagers and adults, they want to knock it out of the park when the moment of testing comes. Like, I want to do well when I get tempted to do this and that. Or I really want to be able to say something when someone asks me about my faith in Jesus. Or I really want to persevere when it gets hard. Like, we really have this desire to perform when a big test comes. But what we don't have the desire to do is to train. And so the reality is, if you haven't done the spiritual training, you're going to fall flat on your face when this moment of testing comes. The people that succeed during the big tests are not the ones that try hard. They're the ones that have already done the training. One of my beliefs over the years has been that I do think about how the enemy of the Lord works, the devil. Scripture says we're not unaware of his schemes. And I've come to believe that Satan has the ability to crush passion. So if you're just fired up about something, that's great. It's good to be fired up. But I think Satan's pretty good about toning that down. He can pop a balloon really quickly. So I think he can crush passion pretty easily. But I've also learned that I think Satan has a lot harder of a time tempering discipline. So he can crush passion. It's hard for him to touch discipline. So when you're training, like when you're putting in the minutes and the hours with the Lord, it's really hard for your spiritual life to have a lot of holes in it. So I've been in ministry a long time. I got a theological degree. I've done several programs about prayer and contemplation, all sorts of things like that. But when it actually comes to how have I stayed close to the Lord, it all goes back to this paper I wrote in grad school. I was asked, I was taking a class called Spiritual Formation in, I think, 2008. And my professor asked all the students to write what's called a rule of life, which is a fancy way of saying, write on a piece of paper what you're going to do every day to stay close to the Lord, what you're going to do every month to stay close to the Lord, and what you're going to do every year. And I made this list of disciplines that I was going to do. And I've kept about 80% of that rule of life over the last 19 years. That's how I've stayed close to God. And honestly, the fundamental part of it, there's 3 or 4 parts to my rule of life, but the one I do most consistently is daily meditation on Scripture. I'm always in the Word, just day after day after day after day. I've preached so many sermons, but that's not what keeps me close to the Lord. I've been to so many events and so many conferences, met wonderful people. I've read so many books. That's not what keeps me close to God. What keeps me close to God is these times with the Lord that nobody sees, behind the scenes, over and over and over and over again. And it does, it comes through when I need it to. So let's get into your world for just a minute. Here's what a lot of you are already doing this, and if you are, celebrate that. Like, not in an arrogant way, but some of you do this, and you like, feel good about that. You're doing the right thing. Keep doing what you're doing. If you're not, here's what I would, just an encouragement or one suggestion. It's simply, I put it like this: discover a discipline. You don't have to do all these, but I'll just give a few that I know lots of teenagers try these. Scripture meditation, so that my brief definition of that is reading smaller chunks of Scripture. I usually go Gospel or Paul, sometimes Psalms, short chunks, and just sit with it for a while and think about it, pray over it. Sabbath is a really important discipline. Jesus practiced the Sabbath day. Genesis 1 starts with work being a really good thing, but work came into the biblical story with boundaries. Work was married to Sabbath in Genesis 1. And what we have done, not you, but more your parents and grandparents, this whole culture we live in, we have divorced work from Sabbath. And so now work is rearing its ugly head in our culture, and we don't know how to stop anymore. Sabbath is a very important discipline. Fasting is very important as well. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one for young teenagers, but at some point, it's important to try it. It's not my favorite one, but I do it pretty consistently. It just orients me to the Lord. Examine is a fancy word for a practice where at the end of your day, you go back through your day in your mind, and you're asking yourself the question, where was I open to the Lord and where was I resistant to the Lord? And over time, you learn how to become a more consistently spiritual person through that practice of examine. So it's not just feeling guilty. You're actually giving yourself credit for, I reached out and talked to that person. I prayed. That's examine. Youth groups is spiritual discipline, especially just showing up. Even if you think your friends are not going to be there, show up anyway. Youth group is a spiritual discipline. Same thing with church. There's going to come a day where you're going to be 23 years old and mom and dad are not going to be making you go to church. And if you haven't developed the habit of church attendance as a discipline, not just as I go to hang out with my friends, then it's going to be really hard when you're 23. But God gave us His body, and we engage with the Lord by engaging with His body. So church is a spiritual discipline. Worship or praise, just singing, whether it's by yourself or with a small group of people or listening to praise music, that's a spiritual discipline. Regular, deep conversation. And again, some of us are better at this than others. Some of us are a little too afraid of this, so we just make a joke and move on. But if you have a friend or a mentor or a youth minister or your mom or your dad, someone that knows how to go just a little bit deeper, it's super important to get in the habit of that. That's a spiritual discipline. And then I'll also mention journaling, just writing your reflections, writing some prayers down. That can be a really helpful spiritual discipline. I would also say, don't try to tackle the whole list. You have a certain way that you're wired, and I really encourage people, go where you're wired. And so find a discipline that works and where you feel like, okay, I don't hate that. Now, I would say none of these are like, if you love youth group, that's super fun. But I would say for the most part, this is not necessarily super exciting. Again, if you're going to be a good runner, it's not fun. You just got to get out there and put the miles in. If you're going to be a good football player, you got to get out there and put the reps in. If you're going to be a good musician, you got to put the time to practicing in. Like, none of this is fun and exciting, but if you really want to develop, there's no shortcut to this. Here's what happens. I want to give you a vision for the kind of person you could become if you practice this. Look back at this verse in Mark 1. Okay, this blows my mind. So remember, this is the same day. This is the sermon, demon, finish the sermon, rebuke the fever, heal the city day. Then you get up and pray at 5 a.m. Simon and his companions went out to look for Jesus, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everybody's looking for you." And Jesus said, "Let's go somewhere else to nearby villages so I can preach there also. That's why I've come." There's so much that's going on in this verse. Imagine what you would actually do if you were chilling at home and someone knocks on your door, or maybe someone texts you, and you're like, "What's up?" And they say, "Hey, there's 1,000 people, and they think you're the coolest person in the world, and they're actually going to meet you outside your door because they want you to sign some autographs." Like, can you imagine how cool that would be? Like, all right, well, I better put on some cool clothes, and you'd be in front of the mirror like, "Hey, go meet my fans." That'd be really cool if you had that many people that thought you were amazing. And yet Jesus says, "Yeah, you know what? That's not why I've come. I'm not here to be the most popular person. I'm not here to have 1,000 adoring fans. I'm actually here to preach the gospel to everybody. And so I'm going to leave them and I'm going to go over here because these people need to hear me speak. I mean, the level of self-differentiation and understanding who you are that Jesus has is off the charts, to not be tempted by that. So how is it possible that Jesus could have 1,000 people begging to adore him, and he says, no, I'm cool? It was his prayer life. So this is what it'll do for you. If you adopt some of these disciplines and start practicing them every single day, what happens is you're not so jerked around by all the stuff of life. This is the tree from my grandpa's story. The disciplines are the tree. It's kind of hard. It's thorny in the tree. It's uncomfortable to be in the tree. But if you can learn to center on the tree, the tornado comes and you're still there. That's why we practice these disciplines, because you and I have so many things that are trying to pull us off the path. I mean, you've got some friends, to be honest, they don't really care about you. They just want you to do what they do because it makes them feel better. You've got the enemy of God, Satan, who is looking for a way. 1 Peter says he is like a lion prowling around looking for someone to devour. And then you've got your own personality quirks, and you've got your own bad habits. You've got so much that's pulling you away from the Lord. And so all I'm saying is that if you develop even half these disciplines, or even 2 or 3 disciplines, even 1, you become the kind of person that you can recognize, wait, I don't need that. I'm okay. You'll be okay with yourself because you've spent so much time with the Lord. So here's a final image, which summarizes this whole idea. So this is from Odysseus, that story, Homer's the Iliad and the Odyssey. This is Odysseus, a famous scene. So he is on a boat, and he's traveling by this part of the sea where there are these sirens, and the sirens are these mythical creatures who have this very interesting call, and they seduce sailors. And so they're beautiful, and their voices are just mesmerizing. And so when sailors go by this particular part of the sea, they're lured into these sirens because of their voices, but then when they get off the boat, the sirens kill them. And Odysseus knows about this. And so before his boat passes by this particular section, he tells his friends, he says, I want you to take a rope, and I want you to lash me to the mast of the boat so that I can sail through this particular section and that I won't be pulled away by the sirens. That's the story. Now, Eugene Peterson is a famous author, and he passed away fairly recently, and he took this as an analogy, and I love what he said about this. He said that you're Odysseus, and the sirens are all the temptations of life, and your boat's sailing through them, and you can't avoid them. They're there. I mean, it'd be nice if you could just go through life and not have sirens, but you do. And so he has this brilliant phrase, and I've come to make it very regular in my own life. He says, my job is to stay lashed to the mast of prayer and word. Stay lashed to the mast of prayer and word. And I love that idea. And I've made that, in fact, when people say, what can I do? What can I pray for you these days? I say, would you pray that God would help me to stay lashed to the mast of prayer and word? Because if I'm bound by prayer and scripture, then I can sail through sirens. I can sail through temptation. I can sail through doubt. I can sail through suffering. I can sail through my friends not necessarily making the right decisions, but I'm strong because I've actually lashed myself to the mast of the prayer and the word of God. So all this, back to the main idea, it's just one simple truth. When it comes to your spiritual life, think rhythm, not random. Say that with me. When it comes to your spiritual life, think rhythm, not random. That's the key idea I want to leave you with. So we're going to sing now. And I want to offer this invitation again. If you need to talk to someone, youth minister is going to be in the room to visit with you. If you have been thinking about baptism, we would love to celebrate with you your new birth into Christ. Let's stand and let's sing.